So I've really been thinking about language that we use and how, essentially language has come to be a series of descriptors for us to verbally share our experiences, like whatever that might be, right? Like even me talking right now, sometimes it just sounds so foreign and like these sounds coming out of my mouth. And like I know that whoever's listening to this, as long as you are able to understand English, will be able to basically understand what I'm saying. And isn't it just fascinating how like we've been able to develop that over time? I just like am really blown away with the ability to evolve that verbal communication and even nonverbal communication as well, and how we can come up with different symbols like sign language um to communicate, or like written communication as well, and like all of these different forms and these ways, like symbols, writing, for us to understand each other and ourselves. And so something that I'm really dialing into for me is the concept that our words create our world, right? That which we live in. And so that all stems from like our thoughts create our words, and our words, then what we speak into the world, is what creates our reality. And that's so true. So I was becoming really present to this, over the past couple of months, but I had something come up yesterday. So I got to spend some time with a friend yesterday who also happens to be my ex-boyfriend. And I just noticed, I was like, man, I always just refer to him as my ex-boyfriend. And I'm like, why? Why do I need to even say it like that? Like, yes, we dated for a length of time. But at this juncture, we're kind of moving out of that. And, like I've done the healing work that I need to do and like learned my lessons and have been able to integrate it from that romantic relationship. And now we've been able to move into this amicable friendship. It's not to say that we're like the best of friends and that we talk every day and share all of our secrets and stuff, but we do have a friendship. And so as I was thinking about it, when we say like ex-boyfriend, ex this, that, whatever it might be, um, it really carries like this, I don't know. I just didn't like the energy behind it. The phrase that comes to mind is just like trigger energy, right? Of like, because how many times do we have experiences with like ex people and it's just like fucking horrible. We never want to talk about it. We just pretend that the whole thing doesn't exist, right? But I'm like, that's actually not the case. Like, we had an experience and now we're not having the same experience. We're having a different one. And it's a beautiful thing as well to be able to do that. And so I saw him yesterday, and I remember like the video that I made yesterday, I was just saying like, oh, I felt a little like I was just having some feelings about that, and kind of going into a mind's loop of like, oh, what could happen? Like, like nothing fucking happened, by the way. It was like perfectly fine and normal and a good time. Like we got to catch up. We did some investment things that we do together, and that was great. And I just realized like I don't have to be afraid of what other people are thinking, right? And it's our own story that we tend to create in our minds, right? Our thoughts create our words, create our world. So the anxiety that I was feeling and like anticipating wasn't actually a thing, because I was able to identify that story and then let it go before I even saw him yesterday. So I just, was thinking like, well, we're moving out of that like ex phase, or I am anyways. So why not just say it's a friend? And like, who really, like, generally speaking, who gives a fuck that it's my ex? Like, nobody, maybe a future potential partner, but those are conversations that like I can have with people that it matters with, or would be, not matters, but would be relevant for them to know in the future. Like, but for now, it's, why perpetuate that cycle of like the ex energy when we're just friends? And that's perfectly fine. And not everyone gets that, and not everyone agrees. There's, I know people who are like, an ex is an ex and it's ex. Don't ever fucking talk to them again. Like, that's great, and that serves them. And I just choose to not live my life with such rigid structure, because I don't need to. I don't have anything to fear in that relationship. Like, I know who I am and I know where I'm going. And so anything that I do or mistakes that I make, that's on me, right? That's not, I can't blame some other person for anything, right? So similarly speaking, like my ex-husband, we're not really on speaking terms. We've kind of gone our separate ways. So in my mind, like the best way to describe him if it came up is, oh, my ex-husband, because we're not friends, right? And so see how that plays. But when I say the ex-husband, like I don't feel any kind of like negative energy with it, right? And so it's really understanding what's the energy behind what we're saying, right? Because if he was a friend and we were in contact, it would be like, oh, this is my friend. And if it's relevant, it's also my ex-husband. Like we were married at one time. Not a big deal for me. And so I realize over time, like I've really taken on a lot of people's opinions and thoughts and judgments about romantic partnerships and how that shows up after that's done, of like what are the boundaries. But the reality is, you guys, like we all get to create our own boundaries, and those are something that we create for us. It is our structure that we get to flow inside of. So every one of us gets to decide. Now this isn't to say like go and be friends with like all your exes and stuff, because of course there's certain people that like maybe we just don't fucking want in our life. They're just not in alignment, and maybe it is a trigger spot. Maybe we do need more healing, and that's great to give ourselves the space to do that. But let's really dial into, what am I speaking into my life? Am I really clinging on to these certain concepts and like thinking about it and talking about it in a certain way in which will continue to keep me in a trigger state, right? Like this is so big. And even just beyond that conversation, there's also, it's just, the general principles, like law of attraction, like whatever you're putting out there into the universe is what's being reflected back to you. So be careful, like, it's be careful what you wish for, because it might just fucking come true in every regard. Think and become aware is really what it is, of what thoughts you are speaking to yourself, what words you're allowing to come out of your mouth. Okay. And even in terms of language that I use on the day-to-day, for instance, a really popular word is limitless. And what's interesting about that, the more I dial into language, it's a great word. I completely like feel the energy of what that means. Like there is no limit to what we can do. But when you think about the word limitless, it's actually two, let me think, there's like two words. There's the word limit and the word less. Limitless. So when you think about that, it's kind of like constrictive language in a sense. So what could be the opposite of limitless that's not using that type of constrictive language or words? For me, it's infinite. I am infinite. That's what I would prefer to say. That's expansive for me. And so every person will have a different opinion of what language feels constrictive and what language feels open and expansive for them. So really dialing into that and finding the words that are really in alignment with you. And that's not to knock the word limitless. Like, I use the word from time to time. It's, a very relatable phrase. However, when I'm really dialing into it for myself in my own work and practices, like I will choose, when I'm aware of it, to use language that is really expansive for me and not using like the constrictive, like limit less, or powerful, like powerful, like how about power filled, or just power, like I am fucking power. Wow. How amazing is that? And just really dialing into all of these different ways that we use language and that we learn, because it is creating our world. I don't want to be limitless. I just want to be infinite, because that's what we are. And they basically mean the same thing. It's just a different way of saying it. But I like how infinite rolls off the tongue, even though half the time I can't fucking pronounce it correctly. And that's okay, right? And it really just comes down to like what's in the heart, what's in the heart of the meaning of it for each one of us. I'm trying to think of other words. Got nothing at the moment, and that's okay. But it just is something to really think about. Like, are you aware of the words coming out of your mouth? Are you aware of the types of questions that you're asking people and yourself? Are you aware of what you're focusing on in conversation? Like, are you coming from that worry scarcity mentality of like, oh, somebody tells you that they don't know how they're going to pay their rent, Are you instantly like, oh my God, like, what are you going to do? Oh my gosh, that's so scary. It's perpetuating the scarcity mentality versus coming from that place of abundance. And the response would be like, oh, what solutions do you have in mind for that? Like, what opportunities do you have to bring in some income? Because you know what? Like, we just live in a world of abundance if we so choose. There's literally money all around us. Like, everything surrounding me could have a dollar sign on it if I wanted to look at it that way. If I was in a place where I needed to get some money fast, everything I fucking own could be sold. I could make some fast money. Will it be like as much money as I paid for things? No, of course not. But we always have opportunities to like bring more abundance into our life. And a lot of it has to do with how we're thinking and speaking about certain things and everything, really. Because then when we think and speak, that also dictates how we act and how we do things and how we show up in the world. And all of that in itself rolls up into our reality and what that comes across for us. So just be really mindful of the language. It's like, you know, and please, like, nothing here is to like knock the language that you use or any way that you come across, but it's just this awareness practice. Because even I find, you know, yesterday I was like, I don't need to use the word ex-boyfriend anymore. And it's not like a bad term to use if it's an accurate statement, but I just was like, oh, it's actually not accurate for me anymore to refer to him as the ex-boyfriend. He's just my friend now. And that's great. And I get to do that and be comfortable with that and not give a shit who does or doesn't get it or who does or doesn't approve of that. You know, because as I move more and more into alignment with myself, none of that really matters. Like, the past just is the past. Like, it's a learning thing and I get to move forward in whatever way it fucking pleases me. Checking in with my higher self frequently, I will say as well, and like to really maintain that alignment and to know when there's maybe something that's not in alignment and then addressing it then. But for me, I'm really moving out of a place of rigidity, right? Because rigidity is really a stem into control. So if you're feeling really rigid, like, and this is something true for me too, when I find myself feeling rigid of like a hard yes or a hard no, there's a control piece that comes into it. And that for me personally just means that there's some way that I'm feeling out of control within my own life, which has nothing to do with how I'm projecting it. Although everything to do with it, because that's the real reason that I'm projecting my rigidities, because there's something inside of me unaddressed. So I get to be with that. I get to be aware of like, oh, am I being very rigid? Am I wanting to control the situation, especially if it has nothing to do with me, if it's somebody else's life and I'm like, you've got to do this thing. Well, what is that saying really about me? It's more about us, right? The things that we say are more about us than it is anyone else. And so it's just really powerful to dial in. And I was just really thinking about this, like, something that popped up for me yesterday in reflection was when we tell people they deserve better. And I've said it to people many, many times, and I've had people say it to me. And I just had this realization. I'm like, if we're telling someone that they deserve better in some way, that means that we also, that may be true 100%. But the reason we feel like that we need to say that out loud is because there's actually something inside of us that we feel that we deserve better. It might not be the same thing that we're talking to someone about, but there is a way inside in our life that needs to be addressed, that we deserve better, that we aren't quite giving ourselves that yet. Because when we are living from this place of abundance, like, the word deserve just isn't even a thing. It's just like, this is our natural state, is just receiving abundance. There's no deserve or don't deserve. Like, it falls, like, that language literally falls away. And the more I come into myself, the less that I feel like I don't feel the need to tell anyone that they deserve or don't deserve anything or better or nothing, right? Because I can see just the truth of where people are, even if they can't. We're all on a motherfucking journey. We're all here to learn lessons. So who am I to tell you or anyone what they do or don't deserve, and vice versa? because I'm now coming into this place of like less and less attachment to other people's experiences because I'm healing my own. And I'm deeply understanding that I could say to someone, to the high fucking heavens, that they deserve better. But until they do their own healing and their own mindset work and truly understand their worth and value, they're on a motherfucking journey to find that out. There's no amount that I could tell someone that will make them believe what I say on a deep and integrated soul level until they figure it the fuck out for themselves. So why do we have to, or feel the, not have to, but feel the need to call all this shit out? Because we're triggered in some way. We're triggered, and so we point these things out because we really have something unaddressed inside of us. So that's another way that language really becomes powerful, when we dial into like, how are we conversing with others, right? So in one final tidbit with the language that I want to give you, something that I learned from a mentor of mine, and I've heard it before in the past, but she really does a beautiful job of like really bringing us into this of, you know, instead of saying we have to do things, right? Because that feels really obligatory and like heavy, like, oh, I don't want to do it, but I have to do it. It's just saying like, I get to do this thing. Like, I get to go grocery shopping today. I get to bring my dog to the vet today. I get to, I don't know, reach out and do some things for my business today. So instead of saying I have to go to the grocery store, I have to bring my dog to the vet, like, I have to pay my taxes. No, I get to pay my taxes. And guess what? I'm motherfucking happy to do it because it means I made money. I made money last year, so I get to pay my taxes. I don't have to agree with what the fuck the government's doing with the taxes, right? That's a whole other conversation. But I get to do it. I get to participate in that part of being an American citizen, right? I don't have to pay my taxes. I could deal with the fallout of me avoiding my tax payment, but I'm not going to. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it with gratitude because I made fucking money. So I will happily pay. So I get to do all these things. I get to come on here and talk to you guys. I get to do my meditations. I get to, well, actually, I'm really more talking to myself and just sharing, but, you know, I get to share this if I so choose, or I can keep this for myself. All of these different things, and like becoming aware of our language and how it creates our reality. Our words create our world. So be aware of what you're speaking to yourself, both mentally and emotionally, what words you're speaking to you, what you're writing down, and what you're speaking to others, because this is creating the world you live in. Okay, so I love you guys, and I'll catch you on the flip side.